helping you crack the code to productivity. Every Wednesday's our community.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Productivity Enhancement Clinic, another session where we are going to be talking about empathy and insight and how leaders can use that information to get the best out of their people. Empathy sounds very bully, isn't it? I mean, how do you measure empathy? And there are people who actually confuse between empathy and compassion and empathy and sympathy. What really is that? Worry not, fear not. I will provide you some insights and explanation as to how we did it and what you can do and take it from there. Now, the session is going to be set this way. Initially, I'm going to be setting the scene, which is what I'm doing currently. And then I'm going to be talking about the framework. The framework is basically the fundamental guiding principle, which we always use to show what is it that we're talking about. So it gives you a context. I'm repeating this, and apologies for people who are already attending. And if you've attended, I'll try and whiz through it as quickly as I can. Then we'll talk about how we have actually used the insight to help companies. I'll share some examples. I'll give some examples from multiple companies. I'll summarize it so you can get the big picture. And last but not least, I want to show you how we can apply it in your business, right? So let's start. And to actually set the scene, primarily I say, okay, where every business needs to have a strategy. Without strategy, nothing is going to work. But you can have a great strategy, but if you don't have employees to execute it, it's not really going to happen, isn't it? Of course, if you're a one-man band, that's still, you need to have a strategy. And you don't have customers, there's no business. So these are the three main areas that we focus on. Now, we have created something called a deal framework, where D is basically delivery, which is the intersection that happens between customers and employees. So anything to delivery, product delivery, service, sales, everything, that's where the conversations happen. The second one is engagement, where it intersects strategy and employees. This is where employees believe in what strategy is, what they're expected to do, and then deliver on that. The third one is alignment. This is where you actually understand what your market wants, what your customers want, and then start building strategies to build those products or services. And L is leadership. If you look at this, this is basically the four core areas. And leadership is what drives these three things. And that is what the deal framework is all about. Now, every week we talk about one area or one specific aspect. Today, we're going to be talking about, area number 2, 4, and bits of one, how it can actually impact customers. But next week, we're going to go a bit more into that. Now, great leaders start with a sense of purpose, and they are obsessed about growth. Then they actually are really anal about creating amazing customer experiences. Focus on employees and building a great team to do that. They are absolutely paranoid about affecting things and executing things efficiently and effectively. And last but not least, they are actually pushing the envelope slightly here, there, stretching what is possible, probable to get the best out of people, best out of their teams, give the best to their customers, and so on and so forth. So when I look at the leaders that have actually succeeded using this, I'm going to be talking about them and what they did. So that's what the session is all about. Now, people who know me know that I am actually a fan of creating acronyms. So this is another acronym for you. It is the Empathy Insight Performance Framework, which I call it as the SAS framework. What do you mean by SAS? The first one is the sense, surface, invisible to truths. Now, if you want to actually get things done, you want to use empathy to drive performance, you need to understand what is happening. So you need to understand or have a make sense of what is happening out there. Then, once you have that, you then use that to align teams with a purpose. Once you do that, the third step, which is the A, which is the activate, then you can lead change through behavior. This is where you can then start leveraging the power of empathy, leveraging the power of trust, and so on and so forth to get the best out of teams. Last one is sustain, where you actually create a rhythm and use that to build high performing teams and cultures. So that's SaaS for you. So what I'm going to do today is going to walk through each element of it so that it gives you an understanding of where we are and how we help companies. So let's start with sense. Now, it's about understanding how others are. It was Gandhi who said, walk in another man's shoes and you will be able to feel the pain or the pleasure that they actually are experiencing. So to feel something, you need to actually be putting yourself in their skin or shoes, depending on how you see it. So to do that, the first thing you do is basically start looking at what are the signals that are there. You need to start collecting data to understand how you feel, right? I'm trying to now explain how to create an intangible thing to a tangible thing. So the first thing is we start looking at the data. Look at signals. That's what I say. Look at how people are feeling. Ask them a simple question. Do you think your manager is empathetic on a scale of 1 to 10? Not a very complex survey questionnaire. Ask them that simple question. And then ask them, why did you give them that score? Simple. So by understanding how you can see, perceive people's feelings of how others are treating them, how empathetic their bosses are, you get a sense of what is happening. Now, the thing that happens is you start looking at the friction that exists between managers and employees, between teams, between departments. So it allows you to say, oh, these are the areas of stress. These are the areas where it is stretched to the maximum limit. So we need to ensure that is addressed. Once you have got this insight, then you say, okay, why is it happening? Because it says no right or wrong, right? If life was so objective, black or white, things would be easier to deal with. We live in shades of gray. And to complicate it, everyone has their own beliefs and their own values, which impacts how they think, how they perceive. So, without understanding where people are coming from, what you say to how it is received is actually going to cause a lot of problem, and there's going to be a lot of gaps that come out as a result. You need to understand why that gaps exist and how can you then bridge those gaps. When we say something to our teams, how many times have you actually thought or asked your team, forget about your team, when you talk to your child or your wife, when you say something, do you go back and ask them to repeat what you said? Is this what you actually understood? If it's a better off, probably it might be a risky strategy. So you might actually get, hit on your head. But what I'm trying to say is trying to understand that they understood what you were trying to convey allows you to understand where the gaps are. Once you understand that, then you can clarify it and you can build a team where people understand. So, if you want to change something at a very deeper level, you need to show that you understand where they are coming from. Before you even start talking about change or talking about metrics, the first S allows you to do that. Then you start aligning people, where you then say, okay, this is what we are all about. This is what is acceptable here, and this is what is not acceptable. So you create a clear vision of or a direction for the team and say what is acceptable and what is not from a behavioral perspective. Then you start measuring them. As I said, asking them a simple question: was did my conversation make you feel listened, valued? And do you think I was empathetic? Or ask a question: was your manager empathetic? One question, simple thing. Because when you complicate things, and normally people get stuck when, oh, it's an intangible thing. How do I start? You have to start somewhere. Now, when you have more data, you start building on it. Like it's like a child, isn't it? I mean, when a child is born, the child does not know integral calculus or rocket science. The child has to grow. So you start feeding it from alphabets, A, B, C, D. So measurable behaviors, I'm not talking of grand questionnaires, ask simple things that you can actually get some quick pulse and then do something with it. When you're doing something, you need some specific tools which will help people get the results they want. And you also have what we call as psychological contracts, where we say, you know what, this is what we all are here for. This is what is acceptable. This is not acceptable. As a team, we will do this. As a team, we will not do this. And we normally used to have a mantra which kind of brings everything together. Now, when you make this absolutely clear, you end up with a team that is clear, that has got amazing clarity, and you can then get them to become responsible for anything that you want them to do. And when you bring in the responsibility, then you can hold them accountable. So the second A, align, connects people, purpose, and priorities. Now, the third one is where you activate, where you lead the change through behavior. And this is where the hard work that you have put in the first two stages comes to fruition. You can actually look at various things that you can do as an organization to build empathy. And what we normally do is basically we start asking, okay, what happens if the customer feels that you are not behaving properly? If the customer feels that they are not, so you get a number there. Oh, the sale is going to go down. So what is actually going to impact you? So by being empathetic, that's what's happening. But why were you like that? Because I was not treated properly by my manager or by my colleague. So what happens there? So you can start cascading anything back to how you felt and link it back, or elevate it to link it back to a business metric. What we did was basically we actually started training managers, because we all know empathy is important. And funnily enough, like for example, there are two things that are there: trust and empathy, that really impact how you feel at a very, very, very deep level. And I've been talking about this for quite some time now. Now, trust, you don't trust people straight away, do you? It takes a while for you to build that trust. You need to have multiple episodes of interaction before the trust grows, and so on and so forth. But empathy, on the other hand, is basically, you start off with high levels of empathy. That's why we always open our wallets when we see a child in need, or when you see an advert where they say this is what, you can help X number of people. We are highly empathetic beings. So that is there. But unfortunately, we have forgotten how to tap into that empathy. And we seldom put ourselves in others' shoes to understand where they're coming from. So, what we have done when we actually do this, we start off with a very simple exercise, which is understand what your undercurrents are, how empathy is there, how trusted people are, what is happening. Then use that to understand the differences, the friction, use that to bring the teams together. Then we say, okay, now we are all a unified team. This is what we want to achieve. This is where we are going. And we give them a clear steer on where is the journey starting, where it is going to end, who is going to be leading it. And this is all about pulling people. See, we have leadership that can push. You can be an authoritative, toxic leader, or an aggressive leader. But the leaders that I'm talking of are all leaders who actually pull people. They don't push them, they pull them. They are there with them, they walk with them. And to do that, they have to demonstrate that they are empathetic, that they really care. And that's what we do in the activate phase. When we start some change, it starts from the top, because the leaders have to iron their differences and start singing from the same hymn sheet. Once you do that, you can then percolate it to the next level and next level and next level. And the change happens very quickly if you do it that way, rather than doing it from a bottom up perspective. Now, what we did, basically, let me share this. Okay. So we used to provide a cheat sheet like this. So if your colleagues actually give you a score of 2, what are they seeing? Because you will have to understand what are they seeing and what is happening from their perspective. What are they seeing? What do they understand? How they feel appreciated, and what is actually communicated to them. We give managers a cheat sheet like this. So you can go through this. Once they understand this, the first level of conversation where we talk about signals and understanding, this gives them a clear view of where they are. Then what we do is we get them through a training program. And we call this basically, I mean, this is basically various things that are happening, but I'm going to speak specifically of empathy and the model that we use. Again, another acronym for you, CAP. It's about communication. It's about being aware where what is happening in individuals' lives and about understanding the perspectives. And this goes as a loop again and again and again. And that actually makes people become much more empathetic. So we do a lot of exercises and so on and so forth. So what we do is basically we actually start off with tools like Johari window, where people who have not heard of it, please, there's so much of information out there where you talk about Johari window. You can look at that. And we also have other tools that we have. Every time they complete an exercise, we actually get them to summarize what have you learned and how are you going to apply this. Now, how are you going to listen? We have a very simple exercise and we just say, okay, talk about themselves for up to a minute or write something up to a minute. The clue is in up to a minute. People don't listen that. They keep writing. Some people just say, oh, this is what it is, plop, and they stop. So that tells us who's listening intently, who's not. And we then use that to show how they can change the way they approach their people when they try to listen and empathize with them. We need to actually get them to understand what are they saying? How are they saying it? What's their body language? And then you summarize. This is what you said. Is that right? So we do this exercise and this becomes second nature. Then the third thing that we do is basically how do you provide feedback? Because a lot of times when you manage people, things do go wrong. Do you shout and you say, this is my house, your my way, highway, or this is my department, my way or highway? No, you can't. So we teach people how to provide empathetic feedback. Use that. And what we do is we bring all this together and then we actually take it and ensure that they implement it effectively. So that's what happens in the activate phase. It's about role modeling behaviors. It's about building trust. It's about analyzing what is being said to what is actually implied. That's a significant difference. How is it then going to impact people? Understand how that then impacts their ability to perform and what KPIs then get impacted as a result. You could be an aggressive leader pushing people always. Empathy is going down, down, down. So then their trust is going down, down, down. Then they're going to get stressed. Work is going to suffer. I mean, your work is going to suffer. You're not going to meet your targets, or probably people are going to may hit the targets, but are going to, feel burnt out. Impacts absenteeism, which then impacts productivity, which then impacts the bottom line contribution and the top line contribution. So you can then start seeing how these things actually start making an impact. But keep it simple. Don't make it complex. Don't make it complicated. Because we live in a complex world already. By keeping it simple, by keeping it measurable, you can start doing something with it. The last bit is once you get into that rhythm of doing things, yes, it does appear clunky. It sounds very clunky. But once you get into it, it becomes second nature. We did not learn to ride a bike the first time we got on a bike, unless you're Superman or who got some super skills or Superwoman who were, depending on the audience that is here. We fell a few times. We learned it, we refined it, and then it became smooth. It became second nature. So what we try to do is basically build empathy and empathetic conversations and empathetic listening and linking it back to performance and productivity become the second nature for any business. And when that happens, that's when you sustain. You create a rhythm of performance in him. And that really, really then shows how things can change. You feel the energy change. Emotion is nothing but energy in motion. How many times have you walked into a room where people are negative and you suddenly go, how many times have you walked into a room where everyone is happy? You start smiling. The energy is infectious and it transmits. So when it becomes second nature, you can sustain it. And that's what happens when we do it. And this is exactly what we have done with a few clients. We've helped them understand the impact of all this on customer experience. So that's ultimately the business exists because it needs more customers. And there's the flip side too. Like managers have also been too focused on employees. And this is basically one particular national gym chain where we analyzed the different types of gyms and all that stuff. One particular uh, branch or my one or two branches managed by the same manager. Employees felt brilliant. They were, but then the customer experience was going down. So that's primarily because they had a great time. It was amazing camaraderie. There was no absenteeism. There was all positivity. But then big customers became a bother, coming in and disturbing their party. So we had to show that like too much of this also can with do this without losing eye on your performance. So linking it back is where the magic really happens. Now, how do you then apply it in your life, in your business? First thing is sense. What you want to do is basically understand what are the issues that are there. What are your emotional blockers? What is the team sentiment if you have a team? So I would probably start with, run some pulse checks. Ask, do you trust your boss or you trust your manager, or is your manager empathetic, and so on and so forth. Gather a lot of information and insights. Listen, listen, listen. Someone used to tell me, I don't know where I heard this. They said, like, if you are in front of Nelson Mandela, and if you're talking to him, and if he's talking to you, he will give you this 100% undivided attention and make you feel that you are the most important person in the world at that point in time. How many times have we done that? How many times have you done that with your manager, with your team? Have you done it with your family, with your kids? So start listening and really understanding what it is. Because when you start doing this, you start understanding the undercurrents. A rebel, be it a child or an employee, is trying to get your attention. Go deeper, try to understand what is it that they are trying to say at a subconscious level, which is not vocalized or verbalized. But that's the real problem. When you do that, you get to grips with what needs to change, and you can change. When you change that, you bring amazing clarity. How do you do that? Say that this is where we want to go. This is what I want you to do. And this is how it's going to make you feel good, or you grow in the organization, or you as a child become better at what you do. What are you going to do as a result? What is important? Always ask the question, is it going to help you get to where you want? That's where alignment happens. When you build this clear messaging, clear focus, and link it back to priorities, you can actually help them see and feel what success looks like. Once you do that, then all you need to do is turn on your empathy radio and turn it into lessons. Create workshops, coach leaders on trust and cultural agility and whatever. What we have done is we used to actually give different badges for empathy. And like it was easy to get a bronze badge. Like 5 people, we used to have something called high five. It's a simple thing where it's like your hand type post-it notes. So you actually see someone being nice to you, or if you see them doing good to their colleagues or whatever, you could walk up to them and give a high five, which basically is a post-it note. Collect 5 post-it notes, you get a badge. which is basically a smiley empathy badge. Then we upped it by silver, gold, and platinum, where it started getting a bit more complex, but the administration of it was pretty easy. It was not just about what you do. We added little elements of how much you support others, how much you do this, and how you're impacting customers, how are you going over and beyond to show that you care. So things like that we added, and we got that, and we had an element of managerial input coming in. Yes, managers are busy, but this doesn't take time to actually see. You see something nice, just say, yeah, it's good. So you start rewarding that. So create something like that. And what we always used to do is get managers to talk to their people, get team members, cross department conversations happening on a regular basis. Because when that happens, you start understanding where people are coming from, what the challenges are, and how you can address them. And the last bit is, how do you embed it into a sustaining rhythm? That's something where we talk about feedback loops and micrometrics. Simple, how many badges have you got? And you could actually trade in a few badges to get something else, or a perk, or a celebration. Connected back to the business success. By doing this, you did this. So when you start seeing things visually, when you start hearing about it, when you start understanding the impact you're having, and then you feel that you are getting recognized, you become part of a team that is unstoppable. So just to recapitulate, you have SaaS framework, sense, identify the issues, go back and try and understand the frictions and address it. Align your teams by understanding and giving them a clear vision, purpose, accepting what is acceptable, what is not, build a common understanding, and what success looks like. Activation, where you build empathy into an engine that can start producing results. Use leadership, workshops, and so on and so forth to build that. And to sustain, start bringing feedback loops. Talk about customer feedback into it. Talk about employee feedback. Look at attrition. Look at error rate. Look at absenteeism. Organizations measure so many things. You can find a metric that gets impacted because someone is not performing. So it's easy. Go back to their KPIs. Suddenly you can start tracking that. So that's how you do this in a practical way. Now, we have actually launched a free productivity audit. So people have actually availed of it. If you are interested, please reach out to us, and we can send you the relevant links. And what it does is basically allows you to understand where you are, where your team is, where you can actually leverage the best out of your teams, and so on and so forth. I know that's something separate. And of course, it is free. I'm not selling anything here. Let me make it very clear. It's free. So that's that. And thanks for actually tuning in. Next week, we are going to be talking about the power of feedback. How do you use feedback to get the best out of your customers, to get the best out of your teams? And how do you use employee and customer feedback to balance out, to see how you can get a high performing, highly productive, engaged workforce and a amazingly loyal customer fan base? Stay tuned. Any questions?